Understanding dopamine. Dopamine, in simple terms and without sciencey stuff, is the driving force that leads us to where we desire to go. It is responsible for reinforcement and motivation of actions. The simplest example is when you watch a motivational video, you feel the urge to get up and do something productive. Maybe go to the gym or literally just wrestle somebody. But overall, it gives you this energy, this motivation to do something. Similarly, dopamine from an unhealthy source such as pornography or video games make you feel good about those things and also gives you the energy to accomplish what you are trying to do, whether it be busting a nut or winning the match. The way dopamine functions is that it plays a role in how we feel pleasure. It helps us strive, focus, and find things interesting. Your body spreads it along four major pathways in the brain, but we're not gonna get into that. I just want this video to be science free and just thoughts, literally just thoughts. Okay, however, it gives us the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of reward, and receiving that feeling is called dopamine release. As we discussed, dopamine is most notably involved in helping us feel pleasure as a part of the brain's reward system. You know, things like sex, shopping, smelling cookies baking in the oven, everything that is basically a sensual desire could give off of it does give off to a certain extent a dopamine release. Now that we have covered what dopamine does, how it's generated, and how it can help us, you might be wondering how to get more of it. It motivates you to strive and gives you the drive that you're missing in order to accomplish your goals. It must be good, right? Well, yes and no, actually. Yes, because it does give you all the good things it promises, it doesn't fail to deliver on its promises. But that's the problem. Getting a lot of dopamine and getting a lot of the feeling of accomplishment without doing anything is dangerous. Mostly because you don't realize that you're not doing anything. You're tricked. You're not doing anything. You are only tricked into believing that you are doing something because you are getting the feeling of reward in your brain. So your brain thinks, hey, I'm getting rewarded, so I must be doing something right. I'll do more of what I'm doing. When in reality, you're just watching a motivational video or watching porn or eating junk food. Either one of those things. But don't get me wrong, dopamine isn't the villain. It is actually one of the most important factors that got us to where we are. Without dopamine, okay, think about this. Dopamine gives you energy, it gives you motivation. But just disregard all the unhealthy dopamine sources and stimuli that we have right now and kind of bring yourself back to the old ages. Like if you were to get motivated, you would we wouldn't have had the energy to strive to accomplish what we have accomplished and literally get to the top of the food chain, becoming the first undefeated species that isn't overpowered by another species. How it's not like indulging in the dopamine release activities that's bad, it's overindulgence in them because they feel good. They truly do feel good. And like a good that is undescribable. You feel good and you want to keep feeling good, so you watch a motivational video, for example. If you want to get out and do something difficult, let's say go for a run, okay? You watch the motivational video, you're so like, I'm gonna go for a run, I'm gonna crush this, I'm gonna get in shape, for example. However, when you grab your running shoes, you realize how going for a run will be much more difficult than you anticipated. You think about it in your head. You look at the weather outside. It looks cold. You don't grab a jacket. You don't grab like long sweatpants. No, you don't do that because that's a little too much work. What you had in mind was you put on your running shoes and go for a great run that you'll never forget it for the rest of your life. But Right now, you're really actually not feeling like it anymore, and you start making up excuses and inevitably convince yourself to stop. But you know, those excuses, they're completely worthless, and you don't know that. That's the thing. You're just trying to get out of it, and you're convincing yourself. You're good at convincing yourself, by the way. Cue addiction. Does dopamine lead to addiction? Dopamine doesn't directly lead to addiction, but it plays a massive role in enhancing the addiction and making it worse. Let's take an example. So, drugs, okay? At first, you don't know what they are, and they look like weird pills or powder that people ingest to feel good. If you were ever to try drugs, which I don't suggest, you would feel a sense of pleasure that is unmatched by anything else. Thus, your brain gets addicted to this pleasure and it becomes a strong sensual desire of yours. Your brain now desires it. It wants it. When you see like that pill, it's like you're seeing a freshly made burger or a freshly made pizza. You just want it, but you know it's bad for you, but you still want it. Your brain now associates this pill with the feeling of immense pleasure and it wants to get more of it. When you're looking at the pill, for example, your brain wouldn't think weird pill anymore. It would think insane pleasure, I want it now. And it starts giving you like a sample of the pleasure you're going to get, and it feels so good. However, the promise isn't as good as the reward actually is because it's way too underwhelming. When you are promised by the brain that hey, this will feel good, this will be so amazing, you indulge and it's not as good as you thought. Your brain's made it up to be way better than it actually is. You know, when you like see really good food and you start to imagine how it would taste like, and you imagine something so completely different than what it actually is, it is insane. But your brain just wants to get you to do it. Cue dopamine. Dopamine is secreted, and you begin feeling that rise in dopamine that motivates you to indulge in the activity that brings you the most pleasure at the moment. And that being drugs, you start to imagine how good I'll feel at just to indulge and take the pill, all while knowing it's bad for you. You still do it because of how great the feeling is at the moment. Your willpower is limited, and even if you don't want to indulge now, you'll probably indulge later on when your willpower has become fully depleted. This, in my opinion, is how addiction works, and dopamine not leading directly to the addiction, but being a large contributing factor to it, makes the addiction worse. That is why it's more difficult to stop indulging than to initially indulge. Healthy dopamine versus unhealthy dopamine. The way I categorize it, and you don't necessarily have to do it the same way, is that I split the stimuli that give off dopamine as healthy and unhealthy. For example, feeling a rush to watch porn is an unhealthy stimulus that you don't want to get used to. However, healthy dopamine released from eating healthy food or knowing that you made the right choice is the healthy dopamine. Controlling your dopamine is impossible, and the urges that your brain gives you because it just wants to feel pleasure, but you have to have the ability to not respond to the unhealthy stimuli urges by simply distracting yourself with something either productive or, best case scenario, not as bad. Taking in porn, for example, when faced with an urge to go and watch pornography, you begin to imagine how good it'll feel, and side note, it never feels as good as you think it does. Your mind enhances the pleasure just to make you indulge. Watch a YouTube video instead. Go for a run, go to the gym, or just do your assignments. literally anything other than watching porn. I'll be honest, the first day is the most difficult day to overcome, but then things become easier and easier as you start to get used to a life free of porn. To sum it up, I think everything that's artificial gives off dopamine rushes is strictly bad. And yes, that even includes motivational videos. They give you instant pleasures and get you nowhere. That is unmatched compared to the feeling of dopamine, of pleasure and satisfaction when you actually accomplish a goal you've been setting out for days, maybe weeks, and even months. Keeping your dopamine balanced is one of the most difficult things, yet the most rewarding things for your future self that you can do right now. That's why dopamine detoxes help so much and are very well known to have improved the lives of many. The point of a dopamine detox is you're rid of yourself of the unhealthy dopamine so that you could only receive the healthy dopamine. And from doing the good habits and thus becoming infinitely more motivated towards your actual goal, not towards some porn video that's replaying in your head. Too much dopamine can lead to conditions that include ADHD, binge eating, addiction, and gambling. The dopamine rush before you do the action, then during the action, only for your dopamine levels to inevitably drop and make you face reality. The hard reality that you are escaping from via junk food, drugs, porn, consumption of bad stimuli. On the contrary, having very low dopamine levels isn't good either, because it can make you less motivated and excited about things. It is linked to some mental illnesses, including depression, schizophrenia, and psychosis. It demotivates you, it takes the fun out of life. And that's exactly what you don't want to happen. Life begins to feel like a burden rather than a pleasant experience to be had. The best way to deal with dopamine is to redirect the sources which give you dopamine. Redirecting your dopamine towards the healthy stimuli is key to having a successful life and a much happier one. And you begin to feel pleasure in small things in life, thus becoming much more grateful towards what you have, becoming a happier and healthier person overall. And most importantly, looking yourself in the mirror and saying, "Good job, I am proud of you."